Welcome to Morning Devotion with Ken Gurley. Devotions designed to inspire you on your daily walk with God. Here's your host, Ken Gurley.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Devotion, Wednesday, October 7th. Thank you for being a part of this, and thank you for making this a very special time. Without you, it just wouldn't mean anything. You come, you bring your prayer requests, you bring your encouragement one to another, and we see some amazing things happen. Answered prayers, we see prodigals come back home. We see people's lives just uplifted, and we make it through another 24-hour segment. And that's what we're doing here, encouraging one another during this uncertain season in which we're living in. And so thank you for being a part of this. You know the drill. Like the page, share the page, follow the page. And it's so good to have each and every one of you here. Eve and Leah and Angela, Christy and David, thank you. Thank you for being a part of this and this morning devotion family. Been coming to you a little over a year now. I guess 14 months we've been doing this, and 15 months, going on 15 months, I guess. But it's been a very, very special time. I was in staff meeting yesterday, and we were just going through a lot of the mundane things and a lot of things that we're going through, and a phrase came to my mind. Um, the muddle of the middle. Yeah, and I think that's where we're at. The muddle of the middle. We're not at the beginning. We're not at the ending, but maybe we're at the beginning of the ending. I don't know. We're drawing close. And so on this Wednesday, the middle of the week, I just felt impressed on this middle day of the week to talk to you about how we should endure and cope with and get through the muddle of the middle. And I think this is going to bless you, and I pray that it does. I want to start with a story. It's a true story. A story from not far from here. There was a church that started around a kitchen table in the Beaumont area of Texas, the Golden Triangle area. And there was about 10 or so people who joined together with a young pastor and his wife to start that church. And it began to grow, and they went from one place to the next and began to grow the church and turned an old dealership, I believe it was, into a worship center. And many people wanted to be baptized, so they didn't have a baptistry, so they brought an indoor swimming pool into the church, one of those inflatables that you buy. And when word spread about it, there was people lined up to be baptized, and a dozen, and soon 2 dozen. And when the pool got set up, the pastor realized we need to fill it with water, but I don't have a water hose, and decided I need to run go buy a water hose. And it's just as he turned, people were lined up to be baptized, and just as he turned to make his way to the car, a guy named John stopped and said, "Pastor, I'm so glad I caught you. I've got to talk to you right now." The pastor asked him, "Walk with me. I'm headed to I've got to run to the hardware store." But the man said, "No, it's too personal." Something about the voice of that man, John, caused the pastor to stop, ask, "What's the matter?" And John asked, "Is this place for real? I've got a really messed up life. And can my life, here I am at the midpoint of my life, can it really start over again?" That, that, folks, is the muddle of the middle. And I want to deal with you. I'm going to finish that story, Lord permitting, toward the end of the devotion today. But I just believe that we're in the muddle of the middle, that we are somehow lost. The psalmist said, "Revive thy work in the midst of the years." We're in the muddle of the middle. Um, it's a writing term. It actually it's when writers get bogged down in the middle of the story they're telling. The writer is stuck. Things just won't move forward. No headways being made, and story started well, but now you're in the muddle of the middle, and nothing can do. And I've been to writers' workshops discussing this one thing. What do you do when you get to the muddle of the middle. You know how it begins, you know how it ends, but what do you do with the middle? And they'll tell you things like this. First, if you're in the muddle of the middle, it means you're trying to force an ending to a story that's just not going to work. Maybe the ending you had in mind is not the way it's going to go. Maybe there's a different and more successful conclusion awaiting. Oh, can I just repeat that? Maybe there is a different and more successful conclusion awaiting you. But you're stuck in the middle trying to force the characters and force the story and the narrative to move toward where you want it to go. And maybe there's something better. The second thing they'll tell you in a writer's workshop when faced with the muddle of the middle is you simply don't have enough obstacles in the story. You need a ticking clock. You need an urgency. You got to have an event, a weather event, a tsunami, a wildfire, a storm. You need the tension of conflicting goals. Whoa, if anybody would have known the script for 2020 back in 2019, I think when you would have said, no, I'm just going to stay here. There will be no new year. We're going to add months to the year of 2019. We could have avoided this story. But remember, all of these elements are introduced to the story to bring about a more satisfactory and more beautiful ending and resolution to it all. And then the third thing they'll tell you to get out of the muddle of the middle is don't ever forget the joy. Don't ever forget the joy of the subplots, the stories within the stories, the detours and the distractions of life that make it all the more interesting. I have a question for you. Does it sound like here in October we're living in the muddle of the middle? This story's just not going the way we thought it would. We have a sense of urgency that's been introduced, crisis on every hand. It's hard to grasp the daily joys of daily life because of what's going on. I think we're there. I think we're in the muddle of the middle. In such times, here's what I'm believing. In such times, the goal is not simply to flourish and to triumph and to rise above it. The goal is redefined. The goal is to make it. He that endureth to the end, the same shall be saved. You've just got to endure the muddle of the middle. Can I get a witness to that? Dorinda, Trenton, Yolanda, that is what we are trying to do, is to get through the muddle of the middle. It was Helmut Thielicke who said that Americans have one great flaw, that we have an inadequate view of suffering, of trials, and of afflictions. And we don't get it when times get hard. We don't get it when things don't work out as we planned, how we get stuck and can't get unstuck. I mean, this nation was born with manifest destiny, sea to shining sea. Nothing can stop us. I don't think this is confined, though, to Americans. I think it's a problem the world over, especially with people of faith. But maybe it is most associated with the Western mindset. And when trouble comes, we're just ill prepared. And I'm not talking about stockpiling food and seed away in some remote bunker. I'm talking about the inner resources and the inner strength, the set of our sails, our mindset, that when knives of misfortune come at us, we grasp the blade and not the handle. And we fail to see that in the midst of suffering comes an understanding like no other. In the midst of difficult times comes a you that has never been thought of. You begin to see the value of others in times of affliction. You can grasp the hand of God. When I look at Hebrews 11 and I see the misfortunes, the struggles, the difficulties experienced by those faithful people, it reminds me again of those testimony services when I was a child and I would hear elders get up, elders that endured Great Depression, elders that endured world wars, elders that had seen so much more than I had seen as a child. When I would see them stand up, tears coming down their face and say, I just want to thank God for the strength to hold on. It didn't make sense to me. Who wanted to live the life with a goal of holding on? But I say right now in the muddle of the middle, it's okay to have that goal. I just want to hold on. I want to be faithful. I want to endure the muddle of the middle. Faith is not our ticket to bypass struggles. Faith is our responding to struggles in the right way. It's faith that leads to patience. It's patience that leads to endurance. And to endure is to hold on and survive through this season that we're living in. And folks, that takes great faith. To live in 2020, it takes great faith. I've come to appreciate people that simply hold on. People who somehow learn to survive the twists and turns of difficult life. They receive no great rewards. They have no great battlefield medals. They just endured. Those kids who survived the divorce or death of their parents. Those adults who were raised in a drug-infested, alcohol-soaked, violence-filled home, but somehow they survived. They endured. Those kids turned adult who had to grow up overnight and shoulder the burden of raising the younger siblings, helping to provide a livelihood because maybe a parent was employed, disabled, sent to prison. In fact, can I tell you, some of the people that I really have just described in those few sentences, people that you may know their name, Andre Agassi, a tennis champion, Maya Angelou, author, Johnny Carson, a comedian, Johnny Cash, a country singing, Stephen Colbert, a comedian, Misty Copeland, a ballet dancer, Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist, Holocaust survivor, LeBron James, a basketball champion, Howard Schultz, the chairman of Starbucks, Elizabeth Smart, you know her story, a child safety advocate, Sonia Sotomayor, a U.S. Supreme Court justice, Oprah Winfrey, this media mogul. Now, when I describe adults who survived tumultuous childhoods, we know these people as celebrities, but hiding in plain sight are many more people that just survived. People you know, people that I'm talking to right now. You experience great setbacks in your life, extreme hardships and trials. But here you are, Wednesday morning, a morning devotion. You've endured and you shall endure. Do you get the picture? That life is not a bed of roses. And there's a lot of people out there who have simply endured. And I think they are heroes, every one of them, because these are the people who did not break. These are the people who were resilient. These are the people that learned to bend and bow, but they bounced back. These are the people that simply survive. And I think you and I can better understand the children of Great Depression, their making do, their frugality, their caution. They came through great trials and they endured. Did it affect them? Oh, yes, it did. But they came through it. You and I are going to be affected by 2020. We can't help it. It's going to shape us. It's going to mold us. But we're going to get through it. Can I get a witness out there? We're going to make it through this. So Don and Joy and Edith and Mary and Amanda, we are going to make it. We're going to endure the muddle of the middle. Oh, praise God. Oh, praise God. Yeah, you know, if you've read The Point of Low Points, that I am somewhat fascinated with the life of Joseph. His story dominates the book of Genesis. I'd rather dinosaurs dominate the book of Genesis, but we get Joseph, this Jesus of the Old Testament, treated so unfairly, so unjustly, and you can read the book, but if you would let me just a moment, I want to look at his story in a slightly different way, through a different lens and paradigm. I want to see that when his story bogs down, when he gets to the muddle of the middle, he endured those times. In fact, there are several waypoints, several rest stops, several places where God would reorient Joseph, reposition him, and would give him some action steps to go forward, how to endure the muddle of the middle. Let me share 5 of these with you. And somebody out to the side, if you will draft these, you help everybody. Five of these waypoints, 5 of these rest stops, oasis. I was going to say 5 oases or oases, but I don't know how to say that. So I'm just not going to say it. I'm going to call 5 rest stops, 5 waypoints along the way. First, there's this simple statement: when Joseph was sold into slavery, when it's forgotten by everybody. You're going to read this again and again in the story of Joseph. the Lord was with Joseph. That's the first rest stop. You and I are never alone. Never. We're not left to our own devices. We're not forgotten about. He's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. And he's always with us in our trial. Don't permit pandemic to isolate you. If you're going through the muddle of the middle, life is slapping you around, and you don't think your life has meaning, no joy, no song. You realize you're never alone. You got our morning devotion bunch. We're just getting together, encouraging one another, and you can put your hand into the nail scarred hand and say, Jesus, you've been through the muddle of the middle before me, and you're with me. So first of all, the Lord was with Joseph. You're never alone, never alone. Second, realize that your assessment may be faulty. What do I mean by that? Joseph, this guy with a coat of many colors, the sky seemed to be the limit. He was the dreamer, and then the bottom dropped out from under him. He could have so easily said, God, you let me down. Here I'm in a pit. My brethren hate me. I'm following camels through the dust of the desert. I've been thrown. I've been lied on, cheated on. Yeah. I'm sorry. It just reminded me of a song. There was a song that our kids used to sing. We'd play it. We were into big choir music, and it would say, "Been lied on, talked about, mistreated," and we didn't know that next line. It sounded like talked about Joab Jamal, and so that's the way our kids sang it, Joab Jamal, and found out later it was Sure as You're Born, but. Anyway, if Joab Jamal has been tracking in the middle of your desert, you're just saying, God, how are you doing this to me? But you don't see that in Joseph. There was a certain poise about him. Even when old Joab Jamal attacked him. Yeah, because sure as you're born, you were born for affliction as surely as the sparks fly upward. But you don't find Joseph making premature judgments. He didn't speak idle words. He was like Samson of old. No words fell to the ground. If Hollywood had written Joseph's story, it would have had him plotting the revenge of his elder brothers, coming back from Egypt, taking out each and every one of them, one at a time, those who had hurt him. But God wrote this story, not Hollywood. And heaven knew, and heaven had an accurate assessment of the man Joseph, a man who would wait to pronounce judgment, who would withhold his assessment and his opinion, a man who would figuratively say the jury is still out. I'm just not sure what's going to happen. I don't know what God is up to. And only when Joseph finally knew did he open his mouth. And it was 21 years later when he looked at his brethren and said, what you meant for evil, God worked for good. Don't give a premature ending in the muddle of the middle, because whatever you say and whatever you think in the muddle of the middle, it's apt to be wrong. Just hold on. You got to get to the end of the story and to see how the story is going to end. The third thing I would say is, and this is the third waypoint, the third oasis, the strength to hold on. Joseph was sent to Egypt, tossed in jail for being right. He could have thrown in the towel again and again and again, but he didn't. We see this certain strength, this certain tenacity, not just rooted in human will, not just born out of human can-do spirit, but a divine strength, a God-given tenacity to never give up. Our normal responses to extreme trials and hardships are so typical and expected. We grow disappointed, we grow discouraged, we get angry, we get frustrated, we blame other people. Some will even try to blame God. But may God give us the strength to say, I'm not going to give up. A faith born of adversity, the healing and the help and the wholeness that comes from trusting God and saying, God, you're going to strengthen me. As my days are, so shall my strength be. When the going gets rough, you're going to lash my feet with shoes of iron and brass, and you're going to set me upon the high place. And then the fourth waypoint is when you can begin to look at setbacks as opportunities in disguise. Joseph did. Whether he realized it or not, God was repositioning for the future. God was preparing him for tomorrow. It was Fanny Crosby who wrote songs like Blessed Assurance. She would tell people that had it not been for my blindness, I could have never trained myself to hear the voice of God and write the songs that I did. Maybe your trial is a triumph in disguise. Thomas Edison, his hearing was damaged as a child, but years later he would say that his deafness was a blessing, for it saved him from distractions, allowing him to concentrate on his work. And out of that concentration came some of the greatest inventions of his day, that there's some opportunities in the midst of the muddle. I've stood at the rare manuscript section of the British Library, and I marveled at the stories that are written in longhand by Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, other famous British writers, or then stood at the tables and looked at the musical compositions of the great. One such man was George Handel. He was at the lowest point of his life, money gone, right side was paralyzed, health broken, and for a time, he was tempted to throw in the towel and just give up. It's the muddle of the middle. It's the emotion of the middle. I just don't know if I can do this. I'm tired. I don't know if I can make it. But during that trial, Handel did the only thing he knew how to do. He began to write music. And out of that despair came a composition known as Handel's Messiah, which includes the Hallelujah chorus, a composition considered to be one of the greatest pieces of music that has ever been written. I've seen that original score in the rare manuscript section, the slashing of the notes, the seeming urgency, writing in intense desperation. Because if there is something that should be born in us, is not a desire to give up, but a desperate desire to see this story finished. And that's the fifth thing. That's the fifth thing. It's a waypoint. It's the hope for a better ending. Don't you ever forget, Jesus is the author of our faith. He is the finisher of our faith. He is the one writing this story. Even in the year of 2020, when our lives get muddled, he's writing. When we get lost in the plot, when adversities and obstacles come against us, when that time bomb is ticking all around us, God knows what he's doing. He's not stressed. He is writing a better ending. He knows the way we take. He knows how he's going to get us through this valley of the shadow of death. When we walk into the presence of God someday, we're not going to talk about these trials. We're not going to talk about the muddle. We're going to be focused on his face. We're not going to talk about pandemic and pandemonium and political upheavals. We're going to be talking about the joy that is set before us, that brings us through this trial, the hope of a brighter day. So keep your eyes on the author. Keep your eyes on Jesus Christ. Can I go back to that story? That pastor was interrupted. He was going to the hardware store to buy a water hose, and a man named John just poured his heart out to him. And when the pastor finished talking with John, he said, "Oh," he was thinking, I got to hurry. There's people lined up to be baptized. I need a water hose to fill the baptistry." But John said, "Pastor, one more thing. When I pulled into the parking lot today, I felt like I had to, but I wasn't aiming my car in this direction. I was really headed to some deserted place, and I was going to kill myself." Yeah. Having crisis counseling training, the pastor asked, "Did you have a plan to do that?" And John said, "Yes, I did. It was already in motion. I planned to kill myself by carbon monoxide poisoning. Before I came to church today, I went to a hardware store. I bought some duct tape, and I bought a large garden hose. I was going to drive down dirt road, and the pastor had stopped listening. He said, "John, for real? You just went and bought a garden hose? You bought a water hose, and it's in your car?" And he explained to John, he said, "John, I was headed out to buy a hose to fill up the baptistry. And John, you happened to pull in here. And what you intended for evil And what you intended for death, it can be used for life-giving purposes. And John helped grab the water hose, and he helped fill the baptistry that day. Because what the enemy means for evil, God is going to work for good. You may be in the greatest muddle of the middle. You may not know which way is up, which way is down. You may not know what is the next step or the now step in your story. But can I tell you, he knows where you're at. You see everything crumbling around you. Just hold on, because God has got a better ending in store for you. I can see a new day dawning. Do you remember that song? I can see a new day dawning. I can see a breakthrough coming. Joy is coming in the morning. God's going to get you through the muddle of the middle, and I believe it's going to be beautiful. Would you leave your prayer request out the side? Share this with somebody. Come on, folks. Let's get through it. On the middle day of the week, let's get through the muddle of the middle, and we see the presence of the Lord at work in our community of faith right here in Morning Devotion, and in your families and in your life and at your work. May God bless you and bless you abundantly. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to Morning Devotion with Ken Gurley. Join us next time for another inspiring devotion. To support this ministry, please visit firstchurch.com/give.